Morning, everyone. Welcome to the April 3rd Board of Commissioners, County Commissioners meeting. Sorry I was late. I was at another meeting and just got here. So if you'll join us first with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So our first order of business is citizen input. If anyone has any input to give on matters that aren't on the agenda, now's the time for that. There's a blue form over there to fill out. I don't have any in front of me, so it doesn't look like there's any. Okay. So second, before we get to consent agenda, this is a special day. We have 3 of our county officials and staff that are celebrating their 5th year with Deschutes County, and so we've got pins for them. And we get a picture of Whitney down front. So with us is our executive assistant, Sharon Keith, our county counsel, Dave Doyle, and our property management director, James Lewis. So we'd like to get a good picture of you here today and give the pin. So.
Of course, you dressed appropriately, right?
And the surprise was due to your administrator, who didn't thought this was the only fair way to do this. 5 years. Yeah. So,
Okay.
anyway.
Wow, huh?
Yeah, maybe a couple action. Yeah.
Hold on, 5 years. We're having lunch
Yeah.
in Salem.
Yeah.
5 years,
Congratulations.
Again,
Thank you.
It's really neat to have. Yeah.
James, it looks like, yeah. So James has actually been here before, so.
Round 2.
This is round 2 at the county, and this one's been better, right?
First one was 1994.
You were really young then.
Yeah.
We just got out of college, right?
So,
All right.
does this work?
Friday
Photo,
update
yeah.
photo, yeah?
1, 2, 3. Great, thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
People in the group home.
Okay, yeah. So one thought I have about that is that it's just a good reminder of how important it is to the county and to all the county citizens to have good staff and people we can rely on, and these are 3 of the ones we do rely on. So thanks for all your service and congratulations for 5 years.
Well, and I'll acknowledge that, yeah, these are 3 folks we work with real closely every day. Every month we have a stack of letters we send out to the employees. There's about 1,000 employees, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, and 30 years we see sometimes. I want to thank everybody that's employed in Deschutes County providing services to the citizens.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
And the wonderful news is that our employees have been here an average of 8 years. So that was one of my first questions for HR when I started. And, you know, it's important to have people that have continuity and commitment to our county. And I know that these 3 people exemplify great service, and I thank them every day.
Yeah, thank you. So, you want to give a speech or anything, Dave?
Oh, yeah, now's your chance.
As a lawyer, we got to give him something.
Actually, I want to thank Commissioner DeBoe, and I almost didn't take the job. He drove over to Salem and took me to lunch, and we had a good long discussion and convinced me it was the right culture, and I put a lot of stock in that, I think. But for that, I probably would have stayed over in the valley and missed out on all this fun and all these wonderful people. So I'm mighty happy you twisted my arm a little
Well,
bit.
that was a moment in time, wasn't it? Are we going to do this or are we not going to do this? How about we get together? So I went right down there and we had lunch. Yeah.
Appreciated that.
I can't believe he didn't understand all the fabulous golf courses we have here. I mean,
Yeah.
Oh, you
Dave,
do.
really?
Fabulous but expensive.
Well,
Well, that's true. So, well, thank you. So our next item on the agenda is our consent agenda. Was there any comments? We had some changes, but I think, did we get all the minutes approved?
yes,
I was able to review the changes, proposed changes.
Okay. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move that we approve today's consent agenda.
And I'll second it.
Any further discussion?
No?
Okay, Commissioner Dare,
Yes.
Commissioner DeBonne?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So Our first action item today is the reading of a proclamation of National Crime Victims' Rights Week, and it looks like that must be here, and Ashley,
No, that's for.
or was this one different?
Yeah, that's the next one.
Oh, that's the next one, okay, so that's the full fin.
In the
The
packet.
bond one, okay,
It wasn't in my packet.
it was?
Wasn't.
Yeah. Oh, here it is, okay.
Good morning.
Was it, I forget, is it Beatty? Beatty, yeah, Ashley Beatty and
Melanie Keebler.
Melanie Keeper, okay.
Good morning. You guys are all familiar with myself. I run the Victims Assistance Program attached to the District Attorney's Office.
And I'm Melanie, and I'm an attorney with the Oregon Crime Victims Law Center. We're a nonprofit that represents crime victims and provides them free legal representation. And I'm the attorney in our Bend office, which opened here last summer.
And so just a couple of facts that I wanted to share in lieu of going into Crime Victims' Rights Week. So in 2018, here locally in Deschutes County, we saw an increase of 9% in victims that we serve here locally. So more than ever, we're seeing our services needing to be utilized. Each of our advocates here locally maintain a caseload of over 100 serious criminal cases each, and then we share the workload on those lower criminal crimes. There are over 400 cases that aren't assigned to an advocate that we share at any given time. Our main hotline, which isn't open 24/7, it's just 8 to 5, but we share it, so we call it a hotline, receives over 7,000 calls each year. And that can be anybody in the community reaching out for help, or it could be someone that has an open criminal case that they have questions about. And I think that just shows the great breadth that we're reaching, our program is reaching, so I'm pretty proud of that. Each week, we help approximately 25 people who come in person, so who are making the trek to the courthouse, going through security, and making it to us to ask for help with protective orders or motions to waive the no contact order, or have questions about their criminal case, or just are lost and don't know where to go next. And I'm just really impressed with that number, because there's some barriers to going through security. I think that can be intimidating for some people. And I just wanted to share that each advocate on our team, and it just segues with what you guys just did for longevity, each advocate on our team loves what they do, and they consider it an honor to serve victims in this county, as do I. So thank you for having us and for considering the proclamation.
Thank you.
In my organization as well, thanks you for taking the time today to put this on your agenda. Crime victims' rights are a really critical component of the criminal justice system, and it's good to remember that crime victims are the one part of the system that are not there because of their own actions, but rather because of the actions of someone else, kind of thrusting them into the system that they may or may not be familiar with. And that's why victim advocates in the DA's office in particular are so crucial to help them get through that system that's unfamiliar to them. Part of my work is also to help with that and to help them assert and enforce their rights as needed in the system. One of the most important rights, for example, is the right to be heard, whether that's giving input on the plea offer or giving a victim impact statement at sentencing or anything like that. And that really empowers victims to feel like they've been a meaningful part of the criminal justice system, that they've been able to give input, and that they're able to start the healing process if they're able to be heard. When victims aren't heard, or when the people that hold power in the system don't take them into consideration, it's really impossible for victims to get justice. So it's key for victims to have rights in the system, and it's also key to raise awareness of those rights, which is why I think this is important, and I really thank you for doing this today.
Great, great. Any questions or?
No, you just said that you came to Bend, last summer?
Yes, yeah.
And you're the first person from your organization to be
Yeah,
here?
so we have a main office in Portland with about 5 staff, and then we opened it's just me, one person office here in Bend, in order to reach out to this population of victims that we serve statewide from our office in Portland, but having someone here in person and being able to connect with the victim programs here has helped us reach more people in this area and in this county in particular.
Well, thank you for coming.
Great. Well, thank you for your efforts. We do have a history of investing this in Deschutes County, and making sure that somebody that's thrust into that public safety system as the victim gets at least gets oriented at what's going on and what the path is in front of them.
A couple questions. Thank you both for coming today and bringing this to our attention and through this hearing or through this meeting to the public's attention. Actually, you said there'd been a 9% increase in victims. Is that because they found you, or there's just that many more victims from crimes?
So that's a 9% increase in victims we serve through filed criminal cases, so through charges.
And are you doing anything differently to identify, are there some crimes that have multiple victims, or is it just a growth of crime?
There are some crimes that have lots of victims. So there are some crimes like identity theft or fraud, or maybe somebody stole checks and they did it for quite some time. We had a recent case here, maybe that has 10 victims in the case. Sometimes you'll have domestic violence incidents where people will intervene. So you not only have the non-offending survivor, but then you have somebody who had intervened and maybe they got assaulted also during it. So there can always be multiple victims and survivors identified.
I was wondering if the 9% act actually was maybe a broadening scope of what victims are affected or with certain crimes.
No, the definition hasn't changed.
Okay, good. And then, Melanie, what, interesting to hear about that, to have that law firm and being, you being here, and what do you do specifically with the district attorney's victims assistant, and do you do things independently also?
Yeah, so we're our own independent nonprofit, so we're not, affiliated with the DA's office, but we work closely with the victim advocates there, and they often will refer cases to me. One example is an area that I'm able to take on as an attorney is helping crime victims who also have a restraining order going on the civil side. And the attorneys in the DA's office and the advocates there can't represent that, they don't represent that victim, and they can't go over into the restraining order and help them in that case. And in some cases where, in a domestic violence case, it's a crime victim who's going to be facing their abuser in court and talking about the same facts that are going on in the criminal case. And so I can come in and also not only advise them kind of what their rights are in the criminal case and help them work through that, but come in and represent them actually in the restraining order case to help them keep that restraining order if that's.
Do people come to you just on their own? They've heard of your organization, they say, I was a victim and I want help, and they may start with you and then some start.
Yeah, I mean, if a victim has a criminal case in Ashley's office, they will have a victim advocate to access and often assigned to their case. And so that's one of the first questions I would ask someone if they called me and said, hey, I'm a victim in a criminal case in Deschutes County. I would start to ask them, do you know who your advocate is or who the prosecutor is on your case? We sometimes get victims that call and their case hasn't been charged yet, or they may just be in the restraining order process and not in the criminal process yet. People find us through our website, through other attorneys, through other programs like Saving Grace that have contact with crime victims in the community. So we have multiple sources of referrals, but having a good working relationship with the victim advocates in the DA's office is important for us because that's, our main bread and butter is the criminal case, and that's what they handle. So.
Great. Well, thank you both for coming. And so am I going to read this, I guess?
Yes, please.
Okay, so we've got the, do we need to pass this as a proclamation?
Yeah.
Okay,
You
so
can make the motion.
we've been, we need a motion to proclaim this, or to, well, it's already been proclaimed by somebody else, right? So, do we really need a motion, or we just?
Historically, we've had a motion, but
Okay.
you can do it.
The Deschutes County adopt so do you want to make that motion?
Sure. I'll move approval of proclamation recognizing April 7th to the 13th, 2019 as National Crime Victims' Rights Week.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, any further discussion?
No.
Commissioner DeBonne?
Yes.
Commissioner Dare?
Yes.
And Chair votes yes. So I'll take this time to read that proclamation as a decision to adopt this. Proclamation recognizing April 7 to 13, 2019 as National Crime Victims' Rights Week. Whereas in 1982, the President's Task Force on Victims of Crime envisioned a national commitment to a more equitable and supportive response to victims. Whereas this commemorative week celebrates the energy, perseverance, and commitment that launches the victims' rights movement, inspired its progress, and continues to advance the cause of justice for crime victims. Whereas crime can leave a lasting image on any person, regardless of age, national origin, race, creed, religion, gender, sexual orientation, immigration, or economic status. Whereas incorporating communities' existing experts and trusted sources of support into efforts to fully serve survivors will develop a crime justice system response that's truly accessible and appropriate for all victims of crime. Whereas with the unwavering support of their communities and victim service providers behind them, survivors will be empowered to face their grief, loss, fear, anger, and hope without fear of judgment, and will feel understood, heard, and respected. Whereas serving victims and rebuilding their trust restores hope to victims and survivors as well as supports thriving communities. Whereas engaging a broader array of healthcare providers, community leaders, faith organizations, educators, and businesses can provide new links between victims and services that improve their safety, healing, and access to justice. Whereas honoring the rights of victims, including the rights to be heard and to be treated with fairness, dignity, and respect, and working to meet their needs rebuilds their trust in the criminal justice and social service systems. Whereas National Crime Victims' Rights Week provides an opportunity to recommit to ensuring that all victims of crime, especially those who are challenging to reach or serve, are offered culturally and linguistically accessible and appropriate services in the aftermath of crime. And whereas Deschutes County is hereby dedicated to strengthening victims and survivors in the aftermath of crime, building resilience in our communities and our victim responders, and working for a better future for all victims and survivors. Now therefore be it resolved that the Deschutes County Board of Commissioners do hereby proclaim the week of April 7th to the 13th, 2019 as Crime Victims' Rights Week.
There you go.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
So we'll sign this, and I think we may get a picture with all of you. One of the comment I have is that we spend a lot of time with the criminal side of things with the sheriff's office, the district attorney's office, and crime prevention. But what you do is the flip side of all the people that didn't invite any of this to happen. And so thank you for your service. So we'll take a picture with us down there.
It's photo day.
Photo day.
Well, if I would have known.
You would have known.
We're all black.
So would
Look
I.
good. No, and that's something we like too, so, good. Come on in. Come on in, you two you stand in the middle here.
Yeah, front and
Stand in
center.
the middle.
Deb's gonna come too.
Yep, come on in. All of you, thank you. We'll hold this up as our official proclamation.
Perfect. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Looks great. Thank you.
Thanks. Good, well, congratulations, that's great. Thank you very much, you bet.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I know, who would have known, right?
Thank you for coming today, yeah, good to see you.
Thank you.
So it is kind of picture day, because we have another proclamation.
Oh, boy.
I'll sign this, let's see, what's this, the third day,
It is.
April. Okay, so the next item on the action item is our Finance Director and Treasurer is going to talk about our new Moody's bond rating. So Wayne Lowry.
This is in support of
That's
that.
good, good.
Good morning, Wayne Lowry,
Morning.
Finance Director. You approved or authorized the Finance Director to go out and refund some bonds last fall. You might recall that. And in that process, one of the things that has to be done is to seek a bond rating. And that helps potential buyers of those bonds to know the likelihood of them getting paid back the amounts that they loan to the county through these bonds. This was the Series 2008 and 2009 bonds, and there were about $7 million outstanding. So we did that refinancing, and I'll talk about that in the next issue, in the next item. But the bond rating itself, you submit a bunch of financial information to the rating agency. In this case, we chose Moody's, very popular and kind of the premier rating agency throughout the country. And they review your financial information. They compare it to reviews they've done in the past. And then you get the opportunity to have a conference call with them and to go through a presentation and lay out why your county should be considered a high-quality issuer of municipal debt. And then after that, you answer their questions, and they deliver a rating to you. So our rating prior to this effort was a AA2, which is a very good rating. The AAA, of course, is the gold-plated rating. AA, 1, 2, and 3 1 being the highest, 3 being the lowest of the AA category. Also very good ratings, and then there's the single A, which most smaller cities and counties would be in. So we went through this process, and what I want to do today is just talk about briefly the strengths that we in the finance department communicated to the rating agency about the financial condition of Deschutes County. So that's what I'd like to do for the next couple of minutes. So, one of the things that's kind of an obscure thing in a way, but also important, is just the fact that our direct flights out of this area and into this area are increasing and expanding. There's, it used to be 1 or 2, and now it's maybe 6 or 7 different destinations that you can reach from this area. And that's an indicator to rating agencies of the economic vitality and the future kind of promise of a community or an area. So they were impressed with that. Growing economy. They did this rating for us back in 2013, and I'll talk about what they found then and how those things have improved. But the growing economy, the thing they keyed on there was the fact that we're more diversified this time than we were last time prior to the recession. Prior to the recession, most of our economy was driven by construction and some speculation even, and you can see that in market value and assessed value growth in the early 2000s. So our recovery from the recession here in Central Oregon is much more subdued and much more steady, and it's not based just on construction. There's a lot of diversification of our economy going on, and that's important. They keyed in on the recreational attractions that we have here and the tourism that's produced from that. We pointed out that the room tax has nearly doubled since 2008, and the rate went up by 1% during that period of time. So there's a little bump from an increased rate, but most of that's just from increased tourism and that sort of activity. Not all commissioners are full-time. City councilors are not full-time for the most part. So a lot of organizations that they look at from a credit perspective have very part-time people running and governing and making decisions, policy decisions. And we pointed out that we have full-time commissioners that are in the building every day, and they're very familiar with the issues that the county deals with and the community deals with. They thought that was important. We have financial policies in place for ending fund balance, investment policies, debt management policies. Not all governments have a complete set of financial policies. My predecessor put those in place, and then we've expanded them a little bit. So that was taken into account. We get the GFOA awards for the budget and the financial reports, and that's important. So their last rating back in 2013 noted these 4 things: robust financial position, extensive tax base, and by that they mean growing assessed value and market value, health, wealth, and income profile of the community. So they take, the health assessment that we just got a few weeks ago, they take that into account. They take the wealth factors, income per capita and things like that. And that indicates the citizen's ability to carry the tax burden that the community places to provide services. And then we had a small debt burden back then. That was their words. And all of these things have improved since 2013, and we pointed those things out very clearly to them. Economic development, they're always concerned about, well, so what are you doing to enhance your economy? And really, a county has sort of a limited impact on economic development. You find that more aggressive in cities than you do in the county, because we have different things that we deal with. But we did point out that we support EDCO and COVA in a big way, both of those, and that those produce jobs in the county and economic activity. We pointed out the forethought in the tax structure that this county has. It makes this county very unique, at least from the counties that I've worked for and seen in my career. Deschutes County is kind of set apart from many counties in the fact that we have voter-approved levies for 4-H, 2 different levies for the sheriff's office, the rural and the countywide levy for public safety, 911, and of course our general services tax rate. So all those things together, you know, you just don't find counties supported by voter-approved levies like we have here. So over the decades, this county has really situated itself well to face the future in terms of providing services almost in a perpetual fashion. One of the other things that, you know, I kind of hesitated, but I pointed out that we've lowered our tax rate over the last couple of years. And they dug that, man. They like that. And to them, that's banking future tax capacity. And that's taking a realistic view of what you need to provide services, not just what you're entitled to. So I think that mattered. And they saw that as a pretty unique feature, that a county is reducing its tax rate, you know, a little bit, but it's an indication of a bigger view of tax policy, and I think they appreciated that.
And so you shouldn't be surprised about that, Wayne.
No, I know, but you know, you're trying to get the good.
A lot of people like that.
Yeah, you just don't know how these guys would feel. So we have a PERS reserve, and many jurisdictions have had PERS reserves in the past. And ours, I think, was started 15, 20 years ago, probably. And most PERS reserves were exhausted many years ago. And this county's had the forethought to continue to contribute to that as it can. And because we still have a PERS reserve, that shows them that we're able to manage PERS cost even in the face of extremely high PERS rates. And they're not able to say that about every jurisdiction that they rate.
You know, just on that point, we were on our legislative call yesterday. One of the former leaders of the House commented that they're very aware of that in Salem, that only a certain amount of counties have any reserve, and most have used them up, and the same opinion was very wise as a county planning process to do that. So,
yeah. One of the other unique things that we have is facility partnerships, and this we don't talk about much, but I mean, this building was built by the county with a long-term lease with the state that leases half of the building, or maybe even more than that. So partnerships, I mean, that's an efficient use of bonding authority and a lot of other things. And we have that with the OSP 911 building as well. So we've done it several times, and it's just a really sensible way to approach local government facilities, to partner with other partners that need similar facilities in similar locations. And I just don't think they see that every day. And then the fact that we're self-insured for health care, and we have a clinic on site and a pharmacy, that's pretty unique for a county our size to have that feature. And, you know, if you look at our health insurance cost, it's not like most cities and counties. It's not out of control. It's very controlled, and we're able to manage it, probably mostly due to the decision to go self-insured in the first place. So all of these things, you know, I see as great, unique features of Deschutes County. And the rating agencies saw these same things and were impressed by them. And so, you know, congratulations to this board and previous boards for making smart decisions about how to financially structure and manage a county. The rating agencies appreciate that. They saw that, and you know, they increased our rating to a AA1 from a AA2. And that's kind of an obscure thing. It's you know, most people don't know or care much about that, but what it means is the county is recognized for its financial situation that's been created over the years, and the fact that it efficiently uses its resources, that it thinks ahead about how best to do things and doesn't just do them because they need to get done. There's some strategy afoot here, and that's important, and that's recognized. So the other thing is, you know, a AA1, how do you quantify, so how much do we really save when we borrow money? And that's really hard because individual credits, even though they might be rated the same, are kind of treated differently in the market still because of who they are, how big they are, and what their needs are, and so forth. So it's hard to say, and I can't give you a dollar amount, but we do better at the market with a AA1 than we would do at a AA2. So it allows the county to leverage its resources in a cheaper way. So again, I think Deschutes County's well situated, and it's in a great financial position, and it's just been a privilege for me to be part of it for the last 5 years. But really, most of what's being recognized here was put in place long before I got here. So I think we as a county are to be congratulated for achieving this AA1 rating. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
It is impressive, and Wayne, it has to do with, I believe, your leadership, because you know our numbers. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, because you'll get an answer almost immediately. I noticed that one of the challenges to go up to the next rating, they said that our pension costs, but you feel like we are adequately covering them at this time?
Well, I think that'll be an issue in the future, no doubt. And even with the PERS reserve, that doesn't quite solve the problem, but it shows that we've arranged things so that we can at least manage in the shorter term, dealing with those increased costs. And it really, those costs and the reasons for them are out of our control, and there's not much we can do. And we've done everything we can to mitigate the impact on operating departments, but even that impact doesn't last forever, I guess.
Okay. Well, great job. Thank you so much.
Oh, I think this is very exciting, and thanks for taking time to do this. Wayne, thanks for joining us since you've been here. Just very business-like. Here's the reports, here are the numbers. We can analyze it deeper. You're able to turn reports around, so we really do know our numbers at Deschutes County. So you brought a lot of great skills, and it's an exciting thing that's happened here, seeing the market respond to it. One of the items in here is growth and diversification of the county's economic base. It's obvious that we used to be a timber resources community. Tourism and retirement was the way to go. Speculative building was just a roller coaster we'd seen many times. Maybe we're past that. Maybe we'll see a downturn in the future, but it won't be as bad, knowing that the investment in the economic diversity is starting to pay off, and it was recognized. I want to say a special thanks to Tom Anderson, our budget officer, and previous budget officers. Because that's where the whole package comes together, and it's laid out for us as a budget committee once a year. But having that professional service, department heads, the culture of the organization, just a lot of great positive things. And it's over time. You can't switch real quick within a year or even 5 years. I remember, budget committee meetings when I first got started, learning about the history of the PERS reserve and the self-funded for health care. Those are long-term investments, and they are paying off. Very exciting. I want to thank the partners, EDCO and READY. The cities of Bend, Redmond, Sisters, and Lapine are all working to diversify also, their city councils. And COVA and Visit Bend, some pretty big organizations. It's a hot spot. It's been a hot spot for many years. We saw population growth during the recession. In the darkest days, people still wanted to be here, but diversifying the economy and making the best of it. So it's an exciting day to see this. And AA1, AA2, I don't know much about the finances either, but it is tangible in that refinancing effort we just went through too. And you might mention, the rate did get better for this organization, and a couple $1 million at a time, it really adds up. Bonding and then the interest on it. So thank you.
Yeah, Wayne, I just reiterate what Commissioner DeBone said, and I shared it with you before. I'm still working to try to extend your contract, but it's really been helpful to us, I think, to get the reporting that we get from you and the current, where things are, what's costing how much and that sort of thing. And I think that kind of has been a tradition in our county that you've carried out really well. I also want to thank Tom, our budget officer and county administrator, for all you've done to write herd on all the budgets and keep things fiscally prudent, and that's been very helpful, I think, as well, and as well as prior boards, as you mentioned, that and prior officials that have helped with this. I think that the fact that it also does recognize the fiscal, that we're trying to be conservative with the taxpayers' dollars has been important, and I know that we maybe need to, that I'm not sure what we can do in the future, but that is good. But we've had a lot of support. I think you also recognize with our community, there's been a real supportive Deschutes County residents throughout the years to fund what's necessary and to provide services that they want. So that's been really good. So your efforts and I think also you've did a great job selling. If you got that many advantages in front of a person that was looking at evaluating, that's a real great salesman job to be able to present all that and articulate that. So thank you. Tom, do you want to say something?
Well, yeah, I was about to say the same thing, Commissioner. Thank you. It's not like Wayne and James Wood, our accounting manager, just threw a bunch of documents in a binder or, pointed in certain directions to Moody's. There was a real strategy involved in putting together the package on which they based their rating and ensuring that all those various things that Wayne mentioned were presented strategically to them to kind of get them where they needed to be for the rating. So I think that was, Wayne was a little modest on that part of thing, but I think there was a lot of work and foresight that went into it.
Another comment? Yeah, so 2006 was the public safety rates for the sheriff's office. I was a registered voter, and I voted in that election. I'm not sure which way I might have voted back in the day, not knowing that I would be an elected commissioner with that. But that's a partnership with the community. Instead of having a base rate and 5-year levies, knowing that the community was growing, the voters supported those rates in 2006, and that's been very valuable for the general fund of Deschutes County, because you hear other counties, and they're, the sheriff, when he says he needs jail operations and more patrol, that really provides a lot of weight at the budget committee meeting, and then where are you not going to fund? And we're just not in that situation with the public safety. Also 911, we went from a base rate plus a 5-year levy a couple years ago, and that was supported by the community. And those are the things that really help our general fund provide the stability, a long-term stability.
So we've got a plaque here that I guess gives us notice that we've got this new rating, so we'll get a picture with you, and if we could.
I want to go over the next issue.
Oh, yeah, that's yep.
That's what that.
That's for that, okay.
Has that too. So.
Okay, yep, that'd be great.
So just real quick then, getting back to the bond refinance part of this whole conversation. So we refinanced both the 2008 and 2009 outstanding obligations. And so when you issue a 20-year bond, normally after about 10 years, you can call that bond, you can redeem all those bonds and get them back from the bondholders and sell new bonds. And so that's what we took advantage of here, was the refunding of that debt by calling the old debt and replacing it with new debt. So the reason you would do that is to enjoy lower interest rates. I mean, you would never refinance bonds at a higher rate because you're trying to save money. And so the 2008 bonds built the OSP and 911 building, just to give you some perspective. That was about original issue of $9.6 million. There was about $6 million left on that bond. 2009, there was a building that has since been torn down. It was really the land I think we were after. That was $3.2 million. And that's now part of the sheriff's public safety complex. So there was about $2 million left on that. So about $7 million, $8 million, kind of in that range, we refunded with this issue. It was the Series 2019 issue. So back in October, when we did our first estimations of what the market would, how the market would receive this debt issuance, we were expecting what's called a true interest cost of 2.88%. And that was quite a bit less than the interest costs that we were experiencing on those original bonds. When we finally got to the public sale, we had our AA1 rating. We also had 9 bidders, and we ended up selling those bonds at a true interest cost of 1.88%. So quite a substantial savings. A lot of that had to do with the timing in the market and just a lot of other things, and certainly the AA1 rating was part of that. So our savings ended up being almost $850,000 present value calculation on estimated savings over the remaining 9 years, so about $100,000 a year. So really the big winner in this is the 911 operation, because they're the ones paying the debt service on that building. So their debt service costs will go down quite a bit. So we're excited about that. We were very surprised by the outcome of that issue, kind of like we were with the outcome of the rating. So both of these, the one project, the 2 outcomes were very surprising and very exciting. And so This represented about a 10 or 11% savings, and a normal refunding is 3 to 4%, and you're pretty happy with that. So this was way out there as far as savings go. So another kind of big win for the county.
Well, and I'll acknowledge that, as I said, usually your staff and your services, you don't provide us surprises. So you just use the word surprise twice, which is very positive in this situation.
Right, we don't like surprises.
Yep.
These are okay.
And that's one of the reasons, one of the reasons we wanted to have you come kind of announce this at a business meeting, so we could let the public know and anyone that's interested. So, thank you.
Congratulations and thank you.
Thanks.
Yes.
So now we can do the plaque.
Well, maybe.
Tom, why don't you join us in this?
Okay, sounds good. Very understated. Surprise. All right, 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. Perfect, thank you. There you go. Amazing.
Do we have somewhere to hang this? Is our office somewhere? Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks. Thanks for presenting that. So I think that ends the picture taking for today. If those of you that are still out there, unless you want a picture taken, but for some reason, but
Tim will, of course.
Tim will.
Photo day.
Photo day. All right, so our next item on the agenda is, there's several items on, is the consideration board signature document number 2019-264, amending an agreement with T2 Inc.
Good morning, Tim Shimke, Director of the Department of Solid Waste. We collect yard debris at all of our transfer stations, with the exception of alfalfa. All the material that comes in daily at Knott Landfill, that's handled by Deschutes Recycling. However, we participate in fire-free events, so there's a very large volume that comes into Knott at that one event, and we manage that. In addition to yard debris, we collect what we term urban wood waste, which is lumber, dimensional lumber, pallets, that kind of thing at Redmond, at the Negus transfer station. And in managing those organics, basically we do that through contract. We bid for this work in 2017. There's 3 vendors out there who will respond. Last time in 2017, T2 was the lowest bidder. They were $40,000 below the next highest bidder. And we typically do a 1-year contract with options to extend 2 additional years. And this is the second extension of that agreement. Small price increase, 2% price increase in the cost of transport. Again, they grind all the material, and then the rural transfer stations, the yard debris gets transported into Knott Landfill. The wood waste in Redmond gets ground, we pay for that, and then they take it away and market it. So there's some cost savings there. We pay for the grind, but we don't have to pay to transport or deal with the end use of that ground wood waste. The money actually spent, the dollar amount that we'll spend this year will depend on how much material comes in. So we don't know what that will be. The contract has a $300,000 not to exceed number, and we've been under that number typically every year. Sometimes not, and then usually the following year we'll increase that not to exceed number. But the last 3 years we've been under that $300,000 number. That's what I have, I guess. Got any questions?
Oh, Tim, I talked to you about this earlier, about the insurance, because I'd heard the true story in Deschutes County where someone was giving an insurance certificate that wasn't real. And so that was just something I wanted to make sure that this was actually their insurance company. Oh, I noticed that the dates go from August to August of this year to 19. Do we need that insurance after that point in time, or is this just for like the big March push?
No,
I mean, the May push?
basically, that when those insurance certificates expire, we'll receive a renewed one. So if we have a contract for however many years that is, we'll see, new certificates as often as need be during the life of that contract.
Okay, so I was just wondering.
So this is kind of that also insured situation where the insurance company is sending you the paperwork on.
And that's a great point that Patty brought up to me, I'm sorry. Many times we get that directly from the insurance carrier, which then assures you that it's valid. I don't think we've ever checked on those that came from the vendor or the contractor, but we will be beginning.
I think you should in the future, though,
that's a
just
great
because
idea.
that was very strange. Yes.
Thanks for coming today. What's on the little unit price sheet here, when it says, is that $6.30 or is that $630?
$630 to mobilize in.
To do mobilize one time, is that like a starting? Okay,
Yes.
so, and then the $15.50 per ton is what they charge? Okay,
The
and then
grinding
transportation.
charge.
Okay, that's, and the rest of it I understood. I just know what the each was, so, okay.
So that's moving the big tub grinder and setting it up.
Yes.
But practically speaking, they're already there, right, in these places?
No.
Oh, this,
So T2, I mean, they move in from, I'm not sure where they're based. They're not local.
They're Sweet Home or something, aren't they? Sweet
So,
Home. They're in
Deschutes
Sweet Home.
Recycling has their own grinder for the material that they handle. But we contract separately from them, for our organics.
aren't they already there, is what aren't they already operating in these landfills?
No.
In the landfill and I thought this was an extension of,
So we have a contract for them, so if in any given year, they'll basically go to a transfer station before the fire-free event and grind it, so we got room, and then they'll come in after the fire-free event and grind it all day, right? So, that's 2 mobs, for the rural transfer stations. Negus being busy, there's usually at least 3 mobs for that, they have to come in once in the middle of the year.
Mobilizations.
Mobilization,
So an event of bringing the grinder in, setting it up, loading it, running it.
right.
I see, okay.
I'll be an
I know
excavator to
the-
load it, a loader to manage the material coming off the belt.
And then moving it along,
Those
yeah.
3 pieces of equipment, in and out.
So Southwest Transfer, I know that there's just a big field out there, and there's no real activity other than people dropping off waste throughout the year or during that fire-free event. So there's no equipment out there until they come in, set it all up, do all the grinding, and then they just tow it all away.
We have a small loader at our rural transfer
Mm-hmm.
stations to push that material up as it comes in, because it gets spread out pretty much when the people dump it, so we have
No
to manage it
grinder.
a little bit in between time, but yeah.
And then I noticed they talked about the 2% increase due to higher PUC fees and fuel prices. I thought fuel prices were lower than last year.
Actually, the federal government charge went up to 58 cents a mile, so they went up from 54.5.
No, I'm just saying that it says that fuel price increases. I thought that
They
fuel
have-
prices were down from a year ago, but.
No, it's up over $3 now. It's on a rise. Yeah, it's up to almost $60 a barrel or something, unfortunately.
Okay, good. All right.
So it looks like it's just chair signature.
That's,
Yep.
all 3 board members signed the agreement in 2017 when we do a formal solicitation and bid, but each additional is usually a chair signature only.
Entertain a motion in support of that.
I move that that the chair signs the document number 2019-264, amending an agreement with T2 Incorporated.
And I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Commissioner Dare,
Yes.
Commissioner DeBonne,
Yes.
and Chair votes yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Okay, next up, we have several things with Cody from the Road Department. First is consideration of chair signature of document number 2019-124.
Morning. For the record, Cody Smith, Road Department. Finally getting out of my winter hibernation here.
Well, welcome back.
Thank you. So my first item this morning, Road Department solicited for bids for the paving of Knott Road in the month of March. The project will include a grind and inlay of the county's portion of Knott Road, that being between Rickard Road and 15th Street, and then between China Hat Road and Highway 97. In total, about 3 miles of county road. We opened bids for the project on March 22nd. 4 bids were received. Before you this morning is a notice of intent to award to the lowest bidder, who was Knife River Corporation Northwest, with a bid of $611,806.
Ours says High Desert.
Excuse me, High Desert.
Okay.
Yeah, I blew it there. Sorry, got my note wrong here. High Desert Aggregate was the lowest bidder. Anyways, okay, back on track. Engineer's estimate for this project, which I also know there's a mistake in the staff report, but the engineer's estimate for this project was $699,219. I do want to let the board know that the bid documents for this, we specified that this work was to take place at night. So Knott Road's one of our busier county roads. We have on average about 6,300 cars per day on that road. So we don't want to be holding traffic during the day. We'll potentially back up on Highway 97. We will be so that'll make us subject to a noise variance permit, which we will be discussing with the board at a work session here in a couple weeks, and then there will be a public hearing for that, I believe, in early May. Issuance of this notice of intent to award will start the 1-week protest period, and if no protests are received, the contract will be awarded administratively. We anticipate the work will start in mid-May, and it's to be completed by June 30th.
Any questions?
No, I don't believe so.
Nope. I'll move chair signature of document number 2019-124, notice of intent to award contract for paving of Knott Road to High Desert Aggregate and Paving LLC.
Correct.
There we go. I was making sure I was the right company.
I'll second the motion.
Any further discussion? Commissioner Dare?
Yes.
Commissioner DeBonne?
Yes.
And
That was
votes
tricky.
yes. Well, I always do it the other way.
Yep.
I know, I'm like, oh, me.
All
Okay.
right, the next item is document number 2019-138.
Okay, so Road Department in February solicited for bids for the supply and delivery of AC 15P liquid asphalt. This is the polymer modified hot oil binder that we use for our chip seal program. This year we anticipate chip sealing 94 miles of county roads, 5 miles of roads within the city of Bend, and then we're still working with the cities of Sisters, Redmond, and Lapine on whether or not they have any roads they'd like us to chip seal this year. We opened bids for this solicitation on February 12th. We only received 1 bid. So before you this morning is a notice of intent to award to the lowest and only bidder, which was Albina Asphalt, with a total price of $1,491,000. That equates to $575 per ton of liquid asphalt delivered. That's about a 5% increase over our previous contract with Albina, which we had entered into in 2016. Fortunately, that's less of an increase than we were anticipating. We were anticipating about a 7% increase in our asphalt price for this year. So with this notice of intent to award, it would start the 1-week protest period. If no protests are received, the contract would be awarded administratively. Our chip seal program will start up this May, and will run every day that weather permits through August.
Okay.
Cody? No one else bids on this?
We did not receive any other bids on this. We actually were, typically that's been the case. So with this hot oil product that we use, it has to be furnished by an asphalt supplier that's located relatively close to the county. Albina is the only one that is. They have a facility up in Madras where they can furnish that hot oil and get it to us in time for it to still be hot when it arrives. The next closest facilities would be either up in Portland or down in Medford, and that's just too far of a haul. We were aware that McCall Oil was kind of set up a temporary shop in Prineville this year, and they were bringing stuff in on rail cars, and we did anticipate receiving a bid from them. They had expressed interest and were talking to us, but in the end, when it came down to it, we didn't receive a bid from them. So, but typically, at least in the last 5 years, we've only received the one bid from
One bid?
Albina.
And they're actually headquartered in Vancouver, Washington.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay, so there isn't an Oregon company then that does this?
Well, again, there isn't
One that's close?
a vendor that has a facility located close enough to deliver hot oil to us.
So you said McCall Oil?
Yes.
Where are they located?
I think their headquarters is somewhere further east, but they have facilities. I don't think they have I think they do have a facility in Portland actually, but they also have them down in California and
Okay,
other parts.
thank you.
Well, and I think there is an investment, and this is kind of off track of this, but the railroad tracks is the opportunity to bring in a tanker load, because that's many truckloads, so that there is a kind of a Central Oregon play there if another vendor could set up in Prineville or get a tanker truckload in. And there was talk about investing in some of the track to have the capacity for the weight load. As I say, that's a different track, but it could be in the future.
Okay,
Available.
I just
There's a question over here.
Actually, you answered it.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Well, entertain a motion to approve this.
Okay. I move that we sign chair signs the document number 2019-138, a notice of intent to award contract for supplying and delivery of AC-15P liquid asphalt 2019 to Albina Holding, DBA Albina Asphalt.
Second it.
Okay. Any further discussion? Commissioner Dare?
Yes.
Commissioner DeBonne?
Yes.
Chair votes yes.
All right. I would just add, with only one bidder, it's much easier to get the contractor's name right. So.
Thank you, Cody.
All right, the third item is consideration of board signature of document number 2019-187.
Yes, so the Deschutes County's Transportation System Plan, which was updated last in 2012, and then the City of Lapine's Transportation System Plan that was produced in 2013, both made the, I would say at that time, fairly reasonable assumption that the Wickiup Junction Interchange project would be delivered by ODOT. And as we are all aware, that did not happen. Before you this morning is an IGA between ODOT and the City of Lapine for the Wickiup Junction Area Refinement Plan. ODOT is funding the refinement plan process to update the city and in turn the county's TSPs and to develop some near and long-term solutions for specifically the Highway 97 corridor in the north part of the city of Lapine, with the kind of reality now that there will be an at-grade railroad crossing there across Highway 97 for some time. ODOT, who will be fully funding this project, has already retained the services of Kittleson Associates to help lead the refinement plan effort. And they'll be doing that hand in hand with ODOT and the city of Lapine and hopefully helping the city of Lapine kind of redefine what their transportation vision is for that north part of Lapine. The process could be it will be somewhat comparable to the Terrebonne refinement plan that we're going through right now, probably on a little bit smaller scale. There's no county financial obligation with this agreement. Really, this agreement is just our participation, as this would include the intersections of Highway 97 with Burgess Road and Roslyn Road, which are both county roads.
What, I had a question on the agreement itself. is there provisions with regard to, will this have an advisory committee like the Terrebonne one did?
Yes, it will. So the agreement itself is kind of abbreviated, and they reference the scope of work for their consultant contract, which is also attached there. And that does outline that a project advisory committee will be formed. I think the city of La Pine is going to kind of take a leadership role in that and selecting members for that and forming that committee. But yes, it will have.
One of the, so and I don't know if it's at this point or some other point to bring it up, but one of my observations being on the Terrebonne refinement plan is it seems to have more kind of government agency heads on the advisory committee than just people that live in the community or have businesses or work in the community. And so when I get all done, it's kind of slanted that direction, and that makeup would be something I would look at of that committee.
Okay, my understanding, and I think it actually is spelled out in the agreement, is that
It does say.
the city of La Pine is going to be kind of the
Where's it, what page are you on?
It's right, page 17. It actually says someone from our planning commission or one of us will be on the committee with key property owners in the vicinity.
Yeah, and then I think the scope of work, the contractor's scope of work, I think it states explicitly that the city of La Pine is going to, one of their responsibilities will be to kind of take on the leadership role of
Well, I mean, we
forming that
obviously
committee.
had a role in the refinement plans in Terrebonne, and we will in Tumalo. You're on it, and so is somebody from planning, and Dale Crawford from the planning commission is on the one. But there's, it's the state parks, it's the
Sure.
school system, there were only, when it got down to it, there seemed like it was less weighted the people that actually lived there.
Mm-hmm.
So I just thought that would be interesting to have some input on that, so, okay.
The intent here is that the city of La Pine would kind of be the ones to administer the selection process
Yeah,
for the
good.
advisory.
But we could pass that on,
I will, yes,
because
absolutely.
haven't been with the process, and then what happens is if there's a lot of citizens that have a different view, they organized a separate organization, and so instead of having them all in the room in the advisory committee, now there's a differences between, so I just anticipating a problem that could occur, so.
Sure, absolutely.
What's the timeline on getting a refinement, a new plan done?
I think the intent is for this refinement plan process to be done by the end of next year.
Of 2020?
As far as actual, one thing that's different here than with Terrebonne is Terrebonne at the end of the refinement plan process, there's $21 million sitting there waiting to be spent on a project. They don't
Yeah.
right now have that in this case. So as far as any, whatever solutions are developed through this refinement plan and how and when they'll be delivered, I mean, that's yet to be seen. But
Well, this is more like Tumalo, where there's a need to do the planning, but the money isn't there, versus Terrebonne, where the money was there, and it's like, does the plan match the money?
yeah, it's a little bit closer to that.
Okay, good.
But at the same time, we're a little more starting from scratch here, whereas with Tumalo, there had already been, previously there had been a process. We'd kind of winnowed down some alternatives, so.
So a couple thoughts. That's kind of the throughput of the area is going to matter to the residents. There's Newbury Estates is kind of off behind Gordy's truck stop, and then Burgess Road is where a lot of people come and go. A lot of people go through there, but also the business interests. The truck stop itself. There's other commercial interests there, and the train track and Wiki Up Station. So I'm thinking that the people's front door is a lot of the businesses, and the throughput is the residents that go through there, and the trucking traffic. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see the makeup of the committee.
Yeah.
But more citizens, I think, is a really good idea. Cody, this is not on this point, but what is the money for the Terrebonne project? What is the money that's out there for it? Because somebody had told me 25 million the other day, and you just said 20 million?
I believe House Bill 2017 identified 21 million for that.
21 million?
I think 25 million is the current estimate for one of the preferred alternatives.
Right,
But I
okay.
think, I mentioned it, that I learned at the last meeting that the county actually has 5 million set aside for other kind of related improvements.
We do,
that Could be part of that
Of
plan.
that.
So
that's correct.
that's
Yeah,
what the
we
other
have $5 million.
Hadn't really been discussed very widely in the other meetings, so, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, our 5-year capital improvement plan does include $5 million for that project. And the intent there was, when we started carrying that forward a couple of years ago, was that anticipating there to be, a spillover on our local system there. That's
Improving some of the local roads that are all within all county roads in this community of Terrebonne.
Correct.
In the city. Yeah. Okay.
So I move approval of board
Oh, yeah.
signature. Oh, yeah.
Just a quick comment. We have a joint meeting set up with the City of La Pine Council in 3 weeks on the 24th. So this would be a good agenda item to discuss both the scope of the project as well as perhaps the advisory committee creation. As an FYI, we're going to talk about the agenda for that draft agenda next week, so we can add this
Yeah.
to it.
I think just, we could share some of our experiences and just as a heads up to the city council there. Yeah. Good. All right.
I'll move board signature of document number 2019-187, intergovernmental agreement with the state of Oregon and the city of La Pine for Wickiup Junction area.
I'll second it.
One real quick question. Dave, have you seen this?
I have.
I don't see your signature up here.
I recall signing it. I don't know, it might not be in what you have, but I think
Okay.
Sharon has the one with my signature.
All right, good. Okay, any further discussion?
No.
Commissioner DeBonne?
Yes.
Commissioner Dare?
Yes.
The chair votes yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cody.
Okay, next item is consideration of request to apply for SAMHSA System of Care Expansion and Sustainability Grant Funds. This is a revisit of an item that was on the agenda, I guess it was the week before last.
Updated spreadsheet, it looks like.
Yeah, good.
And just before we start, Commissioner Dare had identified one of the things on our financial outlook relating to our match. We've provided a revised version of the financial that I've provided to Sharon. It's a minor change, but it's an important one, so I appreciate you pointing that out.
Thanks.
So go ahead, kind of can refresh our memory on this. I remember we discussed it, and we'll probably have some questions, so.
So this is a SAMHSA grant. It's a 4-year grant. It is offered to either states or to county entities for funding to support the System of Care Wraparound Initiative is really our term for it. They have a much longer term. But specifically to sustain and expand services for youth and children and families where serious emotional disturbance is the issue that they're being served for. This grant is, in our perspective, a fairly positive one because it allows a significant amount of grant funds that would support personnel costs. It allows for 10% for indirects. It allows 30% for infrastructure and 20% for data analysis. So this is a phenomenon we're witnessing with SAMHSA, that they're building in more allowance to cover some of the costs that go with the lift of starting some or expanding services in this way. This particular grant, our proposal or our proposed budget is that we support, one significant change is that we support 1.0 FTE behavioral health supervisor. We realized in thinking about this opportunity that if we bring on additional staff at this number, we really need additional supervisory resource. However, this supervisor would also provide direct services under the grant. So they'd function as the project director, which the grant requires. They'd supervise this team of staff, and they'd provide direct services to clients served in this program.
Janice, just
Yes.
one for can you state your name for the record?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Janice Garceau. I'm Deputy Director of Behavioral Health.
Okay, and then are you saying here that you've added, since we met 2 weeks ago, an additional person?
We didn't add an additional person. We changed the project director role, which is what the grant calls it, to a supervisor position instead of a behavioral health specialist to licensed. So it's nominally more costly, but it allows for some actual supervisory responsibility for the team.
So I'm looking at the printout we just got, and what's in red is a 1 BHS2.
Those are the in-kind
Right.
match to the grant. So
Right.
that was the additional, when Commissioner Adair caught the error in the formula for in-kind to grant expenditures, That's an adjustment Dave made, which is covering an additional BHS 1 or 2 on the team as an in-kind.
So
These are existing staff down here in the.
right, but you're claiming them as qualifying for this loan, and so, for this grant. So what we now see is one manager and 2 supervisors, used to be 1, 1, and 1?
No, these are existing staff.
Yeah, the
they make up the
items in red are the ones that had changed. We had originally had.
But I'm trying to figure out where what you just told us is on this numbers.
It's
So
up
you
here
said,
under personnel expenses. So the grant expenses cover the proposed positions.
So 647 originally?
it went down, and it was 666 originally.
Right, so
Yeah.
that's where you,
I was just, yeah, I didn't see it down below in the in-kind. So this is an actual, you're hiring with the grant money, a different person than you were before, which doesn't actually show as a line item FTE. But that's in that first line of personnel expenses, in the change there.
That's correct.
Okay, that's, I was just trying to clarify how it was picked up in the grant.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, thank you. Go ahead. I just had those immediate questions.
So, well, at this point, you may have really specific questions for us, and I'm happy to answer those.
Well, one that I have that's kind of the overriding question is that I guess we're getting credit basically for people we already have that are in this program currently in the value of $333,000 a year for each of 4 years. But in year 4, we're expected to pay over $500,000, I guess, to kind of pick up some of the people we've added the first 3 years.
So we pick up the two of the 3 peer support specialists that were hired with grant funds. And then we add additional existing positions as in-kind to meet the 50% requirement. So the only pickup of additional staff from the limited duration positions are the 2 peer support specialists. The other amount there just represents existing staff that we add in year 4 as in-kind match to the grant.
So you're saying that we already have
Yes.
1, 2, 4 people that we will be able to claim are part of this grant program,
Yes. These are staff to our,
but we are promising to keep them going for 4 years, however we're keeping them going now, from a separate funding, we're committing to keeping them. So the only new money you're saying is $158,000.
we would need to spend probably the latter part of year 2 and the early part of year 3 planning in our budget process as we look forward for how we would cover the cost of the 2 additional peers.
It actually is one of the goals that needs to be stated in the grant, how we would do that. And one of the things that System of Care requires is that we talk about how community partners are going to start supporting our work too. And so things like braided funding and other things, we come up with models for that to cover any additional costs, that it's not dependent on one organization going forward, because System of Care is really about all the system partners working in partnership together to provide services. So the burden wouldn't be solely on Deschutes County to provide that as going forward.
Well, that's what we hope. That's
Yes.
what we will advocate for.
And that's what they would
But
like
as
to
you
see.
know,
Yeah.
that's a work in progress. So to be totally transparent, that's part of the planning process we'll have to go through as we go forward.
at the end of year 2.
At the end of year
Start
2
thinking
is really when we are required to start thinking about that, which I think is really wise. The grant
And then
grant
you
lays
can't wait
that
till
out.
the end, right?
You can't wait till
Can't
the
wait
end.
till
You
the
have
end,
to
yep.
plan ahead.
Okay, so,
And if it's only the 2 peer support, that's not as big a challenge as what it might look like, which is another $500,000 on top, so.
Yeah.
And then the question then always comes up, well, what are we gonna do in year 5 with all this? And so, I guess my concern is the same as it always was with federal grants. We start giving a level of service. I don't, at this point, see just picking all this up with county, general fund and local taxpayers, but that would be the source if we don't get more grants. But
Well-
As I watched this evolve the last couple of years in health, I know seems like there's always some new grant we might be availability as CCBHC or whatever it is, and so, but I do have that concern, and you see it in other places in the country where people start programs funded by the federal government. The state of Oregon's faced with that now, where the Medicaid funding went off, and so we're gonna raise all our taxes to take up for what was a federal program, so this is a concern. But,
It's a concern for us as well. It's a reality that we deal with every budget year. Often, we're able to be creative and flexible and make adjustments and move positions around. And often, we're able to draw down additional grant dollars from other sources. Sometimes we're fortunate enough that our contract amount with Pacific Source goes up. We continue to be hopeful about that. So that's just the soup that we are operating in all the time. But we understand the concern.
Was this the grant that only like Deschutes County is applying for? The state wasn't, correct? And
The state is not.
right, and so we're limited to the 4 million because we are the county?
Because we're not a state.
Right, but didn't they have like 6 million or something more? It
They
was-
could apply for $3 million a year
Okay.
as a state.
Yes.
And they're choosing not to, partly because most of the counties in the state don't have already stood up the level of care that we have in Deschutes County. So they didn't choose to apply, but I actually got an email today that they're really excited about this application and hoping that we're successful.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Well, we all know the early childhood development, the ACEs scores, the future costs of really struggling folks that mature out of the bad situations is the best investment we can make. And also, on our county budget, as I say, I've resolved the fact that the dynamic world of the health department is what it is, and we're just going to manage as it comes and goes. And you just mentioned the soup of the system at this point. So this is an effort by the federal government, and I'd like to keep an eye on what are we committing to locally. If it's a proven model, we should be able to sell it to ourselves because it does work and we can prove it. So then it's a little bit of statistics and facts about what we've committed to do, what we were able to accomplish, and why we should do it in the future. And I'm referring to the 4th and 5th year of this.
Thank you.
any further questions, or?
And at this point, it's a grant request.
Yes. No,
So,
I think
so I'm seeking a motion to approve the health department pursuing this grant request.
I move that we approve the grant request to apply for the SAMHSA System of Care Expansion and Sustainability Grant Funds.
I'll second it.
Okay, any further discussion?
No.
Commissioner Adair,
Yes.
Commissioner DeBonne,
Yes.
and Chair votes yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners,
Bet.
hope
Thanks
this-
for providing the breakdown of the, anticipated expenses. I know it's not necessarily exact, but it's, at least shows a starting point, so we can work from. Thank you.
I'm sure you heard I was able to go on a ride along with some peer support specialists and the transfer of the crisis team, CIT team, I guess it was. So it was about an hour and a half just learning about the specific handoffs. So spent a little bit of time over there.
Yeah.
You were out of town, yeah.
Yeah, well, I actually heard about that this morning. during
Oh,
staff and
that was last week.
Really, it just meant a lot to them that you did that, and your observations were really meaningful for them, and
Oh, and it
I'm
was
glad
very
you got to
valuable
see their
for me.
work, because
Yeah.
it's tough.
So was that the MCAT team?
Yeah,
or-
sorry, yeah, it was MCAT.
Was that, yeah, so we had the opportunity, Commissioner Dare and I, to go to the NAMI meeting, NAMI meeting yesterday, and met both MCAT and the embedded, is it Abby? It's embedded in.
Abby Levine, she is embedded with law enforcement in our co-responder program, which is also a SAMHSA grant.
They were there talking about, or they were there at a meeting we were at, discussing stabilization center and things, and so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to go on the ride along. That's a great thing.
You would be welcome to do so.
Come over, hang out at the drop sometime too.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a
the
fun-
drop,
The drop, the youth drop-in center, that's right here, just.
oh, yeah, yeah. Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
So we're, let's see, actually ahead of schedule, and we're done with the action items. Any other items we needed to discuss today?
Oh, Tom.
Okay. And one second. Also, I was looking through, while we were going through the minutes for today's meeting, and I was looking at appointments. Have we appointed the audit committee people?
We're doing that interview on Friday afternoon.
So you're interviewing a couple of people? Okay.
There's 2 people we're
I
interviewing.
couldn't remember. I remember I had given my input, but I didn't. So you're doing that on Friday, and then the investment advisory committee, we've made the appointment
Friday.
there. You're doing
We
that.
got 2 people to interview on
interviewing on
Friday.
Friday.
Yep.
Okay, good.
And
So
that was
that's
going to be one of
moving
my notes
forward.
here, yeah.
So the last one is the cohesive strategies, and I'll try to get that done for our meeting next week. And I don't know if you've seen that they had a name choice, and I don't know if it's an email request, but they were going to name it Oregon. You remember what it is? Oregon. But I was surprised it wasn't Central Oregon, but it was Oregon Running Fire. Anyway, I'll bring that back.
Cohesive strategy.
Has a
Committee?
I think it's a website
Naming. Okay.
name, just like Central Oregon Fire is and it, anyway, and then, but I'll try to get the other stuff done so we can talk about the appointment by next Wednesday. And then other items, are you going to tell us more about what Commissioner DeBone is doing tomorrow, or is Commissioner DeBone going to tell us about the legislative? Have you heard anything further, or?
So, yeah, I'm working with Judith, so yeah, she can come up now. So she's contacted Phil Schroyer, and already we discussed, what would be an optimum connection to make. Brian Clem came up, and then maybe scheduled with that, so she may have more, because we were just talking back and forth.
Look at that little small piece of paper she's got.
I know, this is for you. So I did talk to Phil Schroers and suggested that we would like some advice on who might be the best person or people to talk to when Commissioner DeBone's in Salem. And he suggested the House Committee on Agriculture and something else, Environment, I think it is. He thinks that might be where SB 365 will land on the House side. There's a chance it won't, so in the event it doesn't, it's still a good opportunity to go down and talk about our issues with marijuana and kind of lay the groundwork for any time there's a House vote or any such thing on the House bill. But just kind of an opportunity to make some relationships and do that kind of thing. So mostly the House Committee, I think that's what we've set up so far. It did occur to me after I sent Phil a note about that we might also want either Commissioner Adair or Commissioner DeBone to talk to somebody about courthouse funding. And I did not ask to have that set up, but I think I'll get back to Phil and see if there's anybody in particular that might be receptive to having a conversation about that as well. So.
Okay, good.
And I figure what I'll do at midday today is make some calls to the offices of our Central Oregon legislators, let them know I'm going to be in the building, and I can probably get there by the end of the day today. One of the other things that happens is sometimes there's a legislative, mixer or something that might be happening, so I'll see if I can inject myself into something like that tonight and be in the building tomorrow.
Great.
And Representative Wisnett, I've done that a few times over the years. If you're if you're just there, all of a sudden you can be in a group, which is not a hearing, so that, we'll see what we can do.
That's great. Well, we also had some feedback from Rob Bavette on trying to get at least our delegation to vote no on 365, and so a resident, Paula Haas, wrote a letter, an email that she copied. I don't know, did everybody get a copy of that?
Yes.
Okay. and-
Recently, yesterday?
Yeah, 2 or 3 senators. And it says a lot of the issues. It's not the way we would say it necessarily, but I was thinking that I think I'll do at least a letter to each of the 3, an email to all 3, remind them why it's important because that ended up just being a target at Deschutes County. So at least our 3 representatives or senators should know that and Rob thought it was really important that we get any no votes we can in the Senate, because that would help us in the House.
Yep.
And so, I don't know, did you both see that? Those, it
Yeah,
looked
some
like
notes yesterday, yeah.
Dave and Rob had a text. Were those all each separate texts he sent?
They were, yes.
So that was good that you forwarded that. So I'll reach out to them, and I don't know if there's any other senators. I know Senator Thompson had told me he was going to vote no on it from Hood River and Clackamas County. I don't know if the Clackamas County's senators or commissioners would have any influence on a couple others, or I know Josephine County, Dan DeYoung said it was a big factor there, so the minority head is is from Josephine County. What's his name? Herman. I forget his last name. Bartzing. Yeah, exactly.
He was on the radio this morning.
Was he? Okay, so we may be able, and then I think it's possible we could get some support from, I'll also try to contact Senator Hansel, and from Northeastern Oregon. So maybe we'll get some support there to follow up on what Rob had asked us to do.
And the value of an agricultural representing senator explaining, just like the concept, if it's under the OLCC, maybe it's not the same kind of farming. If we can start to do that divide, that would be a value. And I can see that after this trip, I'll be able to come back and share, who I got to communicate with and other ends that I may be able to hand off, just loose ends or paths.
I'll make sure that you have copies of the bill and whatever information we've already provided, so you have it. Now, on Monday, Commissioner Adair, Phil Shores had suggested that she actually go with one of the other lobbyists from PacWest and make the rounds kind of to talk about the vaccination bills, because there's already a plan to do that, and it's a good opportunity to sort of join forces with somebody else. So he's looking at trying to set up some meetings with people that are either on the fence about the vaccination bills or, somehow on the other side of it than we are. And then Commissioner Adair also mentioned she'd like to speak to the chair of the Veterans Committee, which is Representative Evans, so we'll see if we can set.
And I'm at the Veterans meeting, and normally some representatives come to the Veterans meeting. So SB 500, that's actually still alive. He's been speaking at the meetings consistently.
And I'll get you copies of whatever bills I think.
Okay.
Things that you might like to talk about with the veterans folks and the vaccination bills as well in advance of that. But at this point, we've not confirmed any meetings, so I will let you know as soon as meetings are.
And if there are any farmers types I need to meet with, I can do that too.
As well, okay.
Since I am a farmer.
And horse people.
Yes.
And then with regard to Senate Bill 365, did it go out? Was it a split vote, or do you know how much
You know what?
passed?
I can't
haven't
believe
heard
I didn't
about
look. I will have to look
Interesting
and
to know if
look at
any,
the roll.
if Representative Olson voted against it. I think Gerard probably voted for it, so
Which one are you talking about?
Senate Bill 365.
System
Wasn't
development charges.
Wasn't that 311 or something?
That was the ADU.
Oh, was that the 88?
88.
That was 88?
88, right.
Oh, okay.
So on,
Both of those are moving off now to the floor, I think, but actually,
and so do you know when those are going to come up on the floor? That's the other
they weren't
question.
scheduled as of late
Do
yesterday.
they do it like,
This morning.
oh gosh, we got this cleared on Tuesday, let's run it tomorrow?
They sometimes go pretty quickly.
So it'd be nice to know if we can find anything,
Yeah.
because it might prompt me to do more sooner than procrastinate.
Yeah, I will
But
double check.
I got other things I could do after this meeting, but that, I'll get on at least with our legislators, but
Right. They weren't scheduled last night, but they very well could be this morning, so.
what about Senate Bill 88? I still, after our easygoing meeting yesterday morning, and simple meeting, I still don't know whether the bill has in it things that are going to prevent or be make it less likely we adopt it, make it
What I
harder to
hear-
adopt, make it.
So I did speak to Phil Shores about that, and what he tells me, and I have not verified by reading the bill yet, but the direction it's going, if it's not actually written in the bill, is that all of those issues about wildland fire zones and things that would kind of curtail what we might want to do in Deschutes County aren't going to be in the bill itself. They'll be sent to a rulemaking committee in the interim. So that's where we would want to engage, would be with that rulemaking committee. Now, again, I don't think we want to just accept that as fact until we see that that's actually what's happening, so we want to watch it. But if, in fact, that happens, then there will be, we'll have an opportunity to engage on the bill itself, but also the place where we could have meaningful conversation would be at the rulemaking committee.
Nick was working on proposed amendments right away, too.
I'll try to get with him today and see where we are, because that would be another one I think we could.
And that's another one I think that is on its way to it's going to Ways and Means. No, wait.
Yeah, I think
Yes,
it is.
Ways
Yeah,
and
Ways
Means.
and
So it's going to Ways and Means
It's
first,
already-
right? Something,
other committees.
some building code costs.
The cost of Oregon State
the paper
platting the wildland fire,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, so
Which
it's.
won't be done until September of
right, so
2020.
it's still in play there, at least for a little while. It won't go to the floor until that does that, so.
Okay, well, we can get the bill out and see. One other tidbit is that Phil had actually sent me an email late Monday night, and I didn't see it before our 7:30 meeting, but where he had actually gotten a list of the Farm Bureau presidents from other counties, and he and I had talked about the strategy of maybe writing a letter saying, you know, are you aware that the State Farm Bureau is pushing this and this is how it impacts us? So I'll pursue that with him today and tomorrow too, so I'm gonna see what we.
And that's one that probably,
If we can come up
that
with
one
it.
would probably be
Yeah.
pretty timely. We'd want to do that probably
Yeah.
quickly, because I think that one's, once it goes to the floor and moves to the Senate, we want to have, I mean, I think we should try to influence it before it goes to the
Well, if
floor,
a
just
letter
to
could
pick
get
up some
together,
votes.
and if there's emails, I mean, it could be that fast,
Yeah,
you know,
it
within a
could.
day, you could turn it
Yeah.
around. Just the dissemination of the question.
Yeah, and then, of course, there, you know, once it gets over to the House side, there's still opportunity to, you know, to weigh in, but I think at every point in the process, if we want to have our chance to say something, we probably want to do that if we can before it gets to the floor. So.
Yeah, okay, so that'd be the timeline. All right, so any other questions on legislative? Do you think that answers what Rob was wanting us to do? Okay.
So, again, the other thing we were going to do this morning, if you'll recall, is just look at a few bills on this massive list.
Oh, okay.
Do you want to do that now?
Yeah, I think it's good. Do you need to leave at a certain
Yes,
time or
I
what?
need to be excused, because I'm going to be late
Okay,
for my, so.
The other two have all the same.
well, we'll run it by you after we,
Yeah, I know you will.
she'll confirm with you that what we've kind of thought of.
Too terribly much, because he's already done this over.
Will you be back this afternoon or do you have
Oh, yeah.
another meeting?
No,
Yeah.
I'll be back.
Okay.
If I wait any longer,
Sure.
I won't be there.
Yep, no, good. That's perfect.
Well, not exactly, but pretty good. Thank you, Judith.
So this is our regular list. It's just organized a little bit differently, courtesy of Laura. So she put in some work on this to do this for you. But, and I'm sorry it's the big paper, but I couldn't read it any other way, so I needed to be able to see it. So everything in blue, you'll remember we've already reaffirmed what we want as priorities. The next group of bills is shaded in green. Those are things you've either talked about changing the priorities or you have not prioritized them yet. You've not actually accepted the priorities that the departments have recommended. So those are the ones I really want to focus on.
Okay.
And there's not that many, so we might be able to get through them pretty quickly. The next, everything in white is a 3, and we haven't really delved into the 3s. I think, in my opinion, we can just leave the 3s as 3s unless you see something that you want to pick off and make a higher priority, but that can happen just over the course of events. And then the very last part is everything in red, as we had on Monday. All the dead bills are down at the very bottom of the list in red. So that's just,
Good, I like that you've color coordinated. That's
yeah,
great.
I'm always, I always feel like I'm papering the world with color-coordinated lists, but it helps me anyway.
Well, this is the one thing that how else do you do it? I mean,
Yeah,
it's
it's
really,
hard to
I mean,
keep track of which
I don't think
things are which.
you haven't even cut down one tree yet.
Oh, I bet I have.
No, you haven't.
Maybe not today.
Anyway, so
So the first one.
they grow back.
Yeah, that's true. They're a renewable resource. The first one, and I'm not going to, if you have questions, I'm going to have to struggle a little bit. But the first one is House Bill 2339. This is the one that makes matching grants available to sobering facilities. We have it down as a 2 support. That's the department's recommendation. But I think you've talked about this a little bit in terms of whether you wanted to make it a higher priority or not. So the question is, do you like it as a 2 support, or do you want to make it a higher priority?
Well, so it says it's a do pass and be referred to Ways and Means. Is it, but otherwise they haven't done anything on it. Is it like?
The
I mean, where's-
recommendation is do pass, so it did go through a committee, and the committee recommended that it be passed, but it is in Ways and Means now, so, by prior reference, so it has to go through that process as well. There wasn't anything scheduled as of
I think it should
Monday,
be-
but I haven't looked again.
So I wouldn't mind putting this to a 1 if we could, if we don't lose sight of our other ones. But particularly, one of the things that was interesting at Washington County, they were explaining a lot about their stabilization center had been funded through some state programs. It was different than what we'd heard. I don't know what they were or whatever, but so this might be real opportune for us if we get our plans figured out and move forward. It might be something we
wanna do that?
could do. I mean, so to have the state fund part of that, that'd be great, but.
Well, so my only thought is, require Oregon Health Authority to administer a program to provide matching grants. That means somebody's going to have to give them money, so they, yeah.
Right.
So that, we don't know what that really, the implications of that are.
And these are matching grants, so we would have to provide our.
Yeah, and
Well, we
we're
already
already
have
going
money
down the
set
path,
aside,
yeah.
though, to match with.
So this would work for us. I'm just saying, it's that,
yeah.
it's that same classic situation of, well, if they have money, let's get some of it. But
Yeah.
of course, it's the Oregon Health Authority, and
But in terms of, to provide matching grants to registered sobering, and it may not be appropriate because the sobering facility is a different thing really than the stabilization center in some ways. It seems like a lot of the stabilization centers don't do a lot of soberings, and we're not technically a sobering center. That would be something to see is, yeah.
Does that mean 24 hours or not?
Yeah, does that mean the licensed sobering center that we aren't doing it presently? So that'd be something to research.
Now I'm back, I mean, I was leaning towards put more effort, but now I'm back to it too and pay attention to this because this isn't the domain we're in right now.
And again, I should
Let's see how that's defined.
So.
So we could learn more.
We could take a look at it and just leave it as.
I support to support where it's at.
Yep.
And the question is, what's the next knowledge about this?
I have my own definitions of what ones and twos are, but I think you all have a different definition. So I just want to say that ones, in the way I think of it, is ones are things that we're really leading an effort on, and we're going to send you guys down there and do whatever you can to get them passed. And so I think a two support is a legitimate place to put this.
Yeah, this looks like the right place for this one.
Okay, but we'll keep an eye on it. The next one is actually, right now it's a 3 neutral, but this is one that I think the health department or health services has asked to maybe be a 2, I think. Yes. So this is one where it increases the tax on distribution of cigarettes, and the board had a kind of a split position on this, I think, or maybe it wasn't even split. I think you were trying to stay neutral because of the issue of taxing more taxes on tobacco versus what the tax would pay for, which is a positive, but the negative of the tax. So I believe the health services folks wanted to make this a 2.
Yeah.
I think they would like to support it, but I don't think that's where you all were the last time we talked about it. So it's your pleasure.
For me, if I was a legislature, I wouldn't vote in favor of this. I'd vote because I don't think it's fair that more and more taxes get taken from certain groups that and not others. And I think they're doing it because they think, this is identifiably something, some group we shouldn't care about or something. But I don't feel that way. I think smokers pay plenty of taxes. I don't. If we want to support whatever this is going to, I think our society should pay for this, not just the smokers.
That's what you did before. I think the health services folks
really
recommended it.
I would actually.
I see it the same way. I mean, there's discussions on both sides, but 3 neutral is the best place that I would support. Other than going negative on it.
Yeah, because I would actually go negative at this point myself. So maybe we'll want to talk to Commissioner Dare to see where she is. But my concern is that it's the classic sin tax, and we'll tax those more. Well, why this particular sin? Or
it becomes this revenue source that you start to build programs from, and then just doesn't. I don't like it. I never have liked it.
Yeah,
and I'm not advocating for it either. I mean,
we'll leave it as neutral until we have all 3 of you together.
But I'd like to. Yeah, I'd be interested in moving it. So, okay.
The next one is, this is the military bill. This is a new one. You hadn't actually picked a position priority. I put in 2 support because we already did
send a letter
something in support of this. So, right, this is the bill that we've already weighed in on. So if you like that.
I'm good with that.
Okay. Next one is 2020. We have 2 oppose. I don't know. I guess you guys never really weighed in on this. I think we had a departmental recommendation to oppose, but I think you didn't actually affirm that at any time. So that's where it seemed to be for.
That was our
fuel is $3.35 and $3.39 in California right now, which is 30 and 40 cents more than Oregon. It's becoming more clear that it is an effort to take gasoline out of the transportation sector is what I'm deducing from everything I see. You and I both were the kind of the technologists, let's save the world with solar panels and renewable energy. It just doesn't quite add up. So I do see this as, an effort to, remove gasoline. I mean, that's kind of what it is. Because of the PG&E environmental guy, they showed all the futures. Every one of them had gasoline dropping out of the system. Tax on gasoline, I do like that we tax ourselves every gallon, so we put it into a fund to improve our roads, you know, and that was what we did 100 years ago in support of a nice, good road. So, yeah, all three of us testified against this at the House Bill
I
2020
guess
public
then the
hearing.
question, I don't think you're changing your minds on opposing versus support, but is it a 2 or is it something else?
Yes, for me, it's a 2 at this point, in the sense that I don't plan to be actively, I mean, we did testify, but the committee happened to be in town, so it may change. You know, we were asked by Eastern Oregon counties to support a letter that was really adamant about it, and I don't know if any of us signed off on that. We didn't go to the meetings, so we hadn't heard all the
Well, and then it boils
discussion,
down to, you know, electric cars, but it's going to be diesel trucks pulling hay and equipment around. And diesel doesn't get proposed to be removed from the system. So it's just interesting. And also, you know, we're buying the thickest part of the distillate to put on the roads in the asphalt oil. And I wonder if that's going to change that environment too, so.
But I just.
To oppose is the right place to be, but we all know
You
it's
can
a
always change
big
them
topic.
at any
Yep.
time, so don't, you know, we can.
And a lot of it has to do with, I think, what Commissioner DeBonne said, that it's really trying to make it obsolete because it's too expensive or to punish us for driving. They say they'll use it to, you know, do other carbon neutral things, but so many of the carbon neutral things are so expensive, I just don't know as a society we should be going that way yet. I think we.
Well, yeah, the market will do it, so that's.
Market will
that
do it
ends
when
up-
it, yeah.
Yep.
And
So, okay.
I haven't checked the status on this. I know that it was moving along.
Well, I think the status is that would be in order to check is, I think a bunch of amendments came out
Yes.
this week that are the ones from the people who have been working on it, the Cliff Benzes, et cetera, that will be interesting to see where it is now, because I think they did actually hear some of the testimony from when we had our meeting here, not just us, but a lot of Eastern Oregon farmers, and I think they're trying to get exemptions from, or special things, as opposed to just, but there's a lot of Eastern Oregon that's trying to, you know,
And I think in
defeat the
forums,
entire
I think
idea.
everywhere, probably except for the Portland metro area, maybe has an opinion about this, and I think they probably heard a lot when they were around in their meetings around the state.
Yeah.
I know there are a lot of amendments. I don't know if any of them have been.
Well,
Should follow the landfill off gas.
Yeah, because we testified about that.
That's going to be indirect tax. That's not going
Yep.
to be obvious. Our whole trash system will get more expensive because of methane.
Yeah, and the other was
Natural gas.
the other we talked about was the impact on gas prices for county, you know, vehicles. We talked about the cost for that, and the natural gas we use in heating buildings. So taxpayers will end up paying more money for all of these government services as well as what they do privately.
So I do see maybe putting a letter together at some point to inject it into the legislative system here to make and put those points down.
Yeah.
You know, cost of transportation for Deschutes County vehicles.
You know, that would be
methane at the
interesting.
landfill, all that. I don't know that it's a 1. I don't know
Yeah,
that.
but we can do a
Because
little-
it's such a big
But
momentum.
it might get to a 1 for us if
Yeah.
some of our other smaller projects work, you know, keep going positively. But you had your testimony that was from the letter you'd written, and I have written testimony, so we might be able to merge some of that in the future. And
That is a good idea. I will check the status and see what the appropriate time is. If possible, it's always great to submit a letter when we can actually get it into the legislative system so that it's available for people to look at. So
of our delegation, the person I think that's the most knowledgeable is Cliff Benz. I mean, he's at the table, and he's advising all of Eastern Oregon about it, and yeah, so.
So yeah, maybe that's a letter intended for, you know, him as a senator that's engaged to read, but then CC to everybody. You know, but that would be the theme, is what's valuable for Cliff.
Okay. The next one is healthcare,
I mean, Senator Benz.
3063. This is one of the immunization bills. Nothing scheduled on it currently. I think you did not take, again, this is one you have not actually decided on whether it was a 2 support or not. So 2 support is what the health department is recommending. I think this is kind of reflective of the discussions you've had, but if you.
Wasn't this the counter bill to the other one, or?
This is the one that George Conway talked about yesterday, that removes the,
But I thought we
what do I want to
did
say? This
support
is the one that changes the exemptions.
I thought we did, this is the one we've been talking about with Sherry Helt, correct?
Yes.
So I thought we did support.
We did do a letter, and we did it, but you've just never actually said to support is the right place, and I just want to make sure, so.
I agree, to support.
I want, like.
I have some concerns with
decision.
what I'm hearing, about the impacts of
Oh,
if
well,
people believe so strongly that they won't go to a public school because and there are people who believe very strongly that if these vaccinations have a risk of, harming their children, that sends them to charter schools or independent homeschooling, and there's an issue with reimbursement of that, I guess, or something, that's a risk,
Yeah.
and I don't, the goal should not be to deny education to children, it should be that keep all children. So, I don't know how the state's gonna deal with that, but it's kind of like, it does, I think all children should get the funded education.
I know what you're saying there, yeah. So if somebody's bounced out of the public system and they end up having to take the cost on themselves, that's not the intention of what would be going
Of
on.
what I'm,
Yeah.
I'm not supportive of that.
And actually, now that I think about it, the letter that we submitted was not from us. It was from the Public Health Advisory Board, and that was the direction of the board that I believe the board wasn't prepared to sign a letter themselves at this point, and so that's kind of where that landed. But the Public Health Advisory Board did send a letter, and we do have copies.
When it first came up, I wasn't really aware of some of these impacts that I've now read about or have heard voiced, and so that does concern me, because
Do you want to change it from a support to something else, or are you feeling like it's still a support?
like we do at AOC, we do support if amended, or, I don't know how they're dealing with this cost of education and
I don't know that
punishing children. I don't know what they're doing legislatively. I haven't heard.
So my thought is, today's Wednesday, next Tuesday, we're going to regroup a work session in which we can probably talk about some of these. And at that point, we'll, if we're going to start to send letters or take a stronger position.
Yep, sounds good.
Okay, we'll leave it as it is for now. The next one is the court, the bonding for court facilities. This one, I think so you see it says one support. This is based on your recent conversations. It was, I think we hadn't actually assigned a priority and position, but if this is truly a one, we'll move it to your one list. Yep.
It is.
Okay.
Agreed.
The next one is in green text, and we don't really know why. Somebody put it in green text other than Laura and I, so we think that means that it might actually have passed, but we're not sure, so I'll have to look at that. But this is I think it did, the reinsurance program. I'm trying to remember what this does exactly. Oh, it has to do with the coordinated care organizations.
One of
This
those
is one I don't really
prongs of
understand
healthcare
much
that
about.
Tom and Dave can give us a brief overview on this one.
Yes, somebody other than me will have to.
It's part of the Green New Deal. I don't know what it is.
2% assessment on earnings from health plan premiums and payments by Oregon Health Authority to manage care associations and includes health care stop-loss coverage as a subject to assessment. I honestly don't think I've ever looked at this, so this might be added to the list. I'm not.
HR and I have reviewed this bill. We're recommending a 2 opposed because of the additional cost to our health plan, our self-insured for our employees. Even though the 2% is a relatively small amount, it'd be about a $10,000 cost to the county. Our main concern is that that's another revenue source that could increase in future years. So that's why staff is recommending an opposed.
Well, and that's why they're doing it. I mean, that's what they've done, is they have this broad scope of finding everywhere they can get an extra little.
Yeah, and I think the intent of the bill was to get at the large employers who might be self-insured. No, they're talking Nike and the huge employers. So one possible amendment that we would propose or like is to exempt government entities from this.
So I think, now you've refreshed my memory because I forgot that this was that bill. I think this has already passed. I think it's a done deal, but I will double check the status on it. And 2 opposes where we had it before, but I think it's done. So I'll double check. Okay, the next one, 2222, requires state forestry department to annually report to legislative assembly. This was one that you hadn't actually decided what to do with them. Our foresters recommended a 2 support on this.
This is the enforcement of SB 360.
Yep.
think we did send a letter on this, actually, maybe
Yeah.
early on.
So, support.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay,
And these are the kind that if we have some extra energy or, we get some of our other priorities finished up one way or another, maybe we would get more engaged
Right,
in
if
if
we-
necessary.
right, if we spend our time on the ones, then as things move through that one list, we maybe move some other things up. The next one, SB 22, requires Oregon Health Authority to establish standards for identifying behavioral health homes. Isn't this the inspection bill?
Yeah, I think it is.
Yes, I'm not sure it is. The bill, vehicle to maintain certified community behavioral health clinic model and payment methodology. No, it's not that one. This is a different one. This is one you haven't actually looked at yet. And Health Services is
Maintain
recommending. to support-
CCBHC.
Yeah, exactly.
But why is there a state legislator? This is a federal program, the CCBHC.
Helps to create a vehicle to maintain. If you like, I'll get you the bill and we can look at it at a different time. I don't have any more information than what's on here. So it looks like Health had it originally as a 3, and they're.
Yeah, I don't know if we want to go to a 2. I think we need to
Okay, let me
find
get
out
you more
what it is.
information on it.
Are you saying support with a 3 or not sure?
Well, whatever it was, support with a 3, I
So
guess.
It was
But
a
I
3, and
just
they're,
keep it a 3 support, which is
Okay.
where it was. I think that they're recommending goes to a 2. So let's
so you
find
want
out
to leave
what
it as a
is.
3, and then I'll get more information from Janice, or she can
Yeah.
come and talk to you at the next meeting. SB 500, this is one Commissioner Adair was talking about that grants higher property tax exemptions for property of veterans with disabilities, and she's been supportive of this. Currently, we have it down as a 2 as a priority. I think, if you agree, I think this is a support, but you haven't decided that. That's a different one. That's a different bill, yeah. I actually can't find that bill, so I don't think it's on our list, but I'm looking for it.
Well, yeah, I don't know anything about this. So currently, what's the veterans? Do they have a
They get a
full
deferral.
a deferral, complete deferral, or do you know?
I'm not exactly sure how that works. We've never had any real litigation around it, but,
I thought it was, there was a cap on the assessment.
there very well might be. Let me see if I can find it.
Well, that would make sense, because this actually grants a higher.
But this
amount.
is specific to disabled veterans as
Right.
opposed to veterans.
Yeah, I don't know anything about this. I'd say 3 support unless we know if it's
More
somebody's, yeah.
Yeah, I'm good with that but you could update on what.
Yeah, if somebody's here telling us how it fits into the big picture.
Get more information about that one as well. We're almost done. SB 1020, I don't even know who weighed in on this, provides that limitations on
I
liability.
could weigh in on this one.
Oh, good.
This one would further erode the tort claim liability on public bodies. It says that if, that the tort claim limit against public bodies do not apply if the plaintiffs prove, quote, elements of state or federal crimes arising from the acts. So it's a pretty broad term, and right now we have state tort claim limits that help protect the county's liability, so this would further erode that.
So we'd be in oppose on this, yeah.
Yeah,
2
that's what I'm
oppose.
recommending.
2 opposed.
Yeah, they're saying if the plaintiff's lawyer could prove that an element of a crime, then the tort, yeah, that would be a,
Claim Act doesn't apply then.
yeah.
Okay, then
Commitments.
the next one, I'm not sure why this one's on here. I really should have checked this. They're
Health.
recommending a 3 support, but I'm not really looking at the 3s today, so I'm not sure why we're looking at this one unless they want to move it to a 2. But this one would actually expand the length of time that is available for hospital holds in terms of crisis, I think. So extends the date by which commitment hearing must be held. So it gives from 5 to 15 days the amount of time before a commitment hearing has to be
It was
held.
mentioned that the stability window is very important here, because if it doesn't resolve in 5 days, it all expires, or you'll get to the 6-month commitment, which is a bigger jump. So this gives more of a step. I forget, it must have been.
I think the
explaining
history of
that to
this,
us.
you know, when Oregon became, you know, going all the way back to one flew over the cuckoo's nest and the whole thing of people being committed for long term, Oregon really became more restrictive than other states. It says most states are 15 to 30 days, and we became back, you can't do it more than 5 days without more process, so it's probably.
We're two support. We're on the two.
The health department's concern is that 5 days isn't really enough to do what you need to do in terms of a patient, so that's where they're coming from. So do you want to make
Be a
it
lot
a
of
2?
cost in that extra time, but I
Right.
mean,
Right, but I think they also note that even though there might be more cost during that time, there might be cost savings down the road because you wouldn't be readmitted.
Well, the real thing was, yeah, the deinstitutionalization, but of
Right.
mental health. And,
Do you want to make it a 2?
yeah, I'm going to do that.
Okay, 2 support. Last one is one you know about. We are in the process of submitting a letter about this one. You looked at the letter the other day and made changes, and so that'll.
So a couple of these, this to me, 2 is good for now, but this could become a 1 if we need to be. So some of these we've talked about with you today that are close to 1s or could be, put them up so they're up at the top of the 2s, so we're ready to grab them, is my thought. I mean, that's how I look at it, is like, if we have more energy, like the carbon might be something that we would weigh in on.
I know.
Yeah.
I've been adamant I
B
wouldn't give you
plus.
pluses, but.
Yeah, so.
Okay, all right. So that's it for those. So we'll just make the corrections to the list, then this becomes, what we will be looking at in the future will probably be just the bill calendar, but we'll keep this list up anyway. But we've got.
Oh, no,
We'll keep it up.
Another
We'll keep it
tree,
up.
yeah.
We will.
This works, I think.
Yeah, so you have, right now, we just added a 1, so we added the courthouse facility, so you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, you'll have 5 1s, those are the things we'll probably focus most of our attention on. And as you say, if you want to move something up later when some of these go, the affordable housing project, I think, is kind of a done deal, although I never
Well,
want
it's
to
out
swear
of
until
the
things.
committee in the House, but not out of the committee floor,
Right,
so.
it hasn't gone to the floor, and that's the last step, though, I think,
Yep.
and it looks pretty good. So that might be one that we're done with, and then you can move something else up at
Maybe, yeah.
that time, yeah.
Let me ask about another issue, which we haven't really talked about in any of our legislative yet, but we've talked about AOC, is bills relating to the Janus decision. And there's some bills that are being pushed by, I believe, some of the unions that are pretty aggressive about base. And
Died.
I thought they did.
so that's what I was asking. Did they all die, do you think, or do you know?
I don't,
So I'd like to check that because there was one that AOC actually supported because it was a clarification of some things. But then there's the ones where, you know, employer was going to have to, they're like workarounds, and then there's all these restrictions on stuff. So I just want to make sure where we are. We haven't talked about it.
one of those is 2775, which is on the dead list. That sounds so terrible, but.
The dead list, I like that.
oh, good, we have
So where's the dead list?
So at the very end.
Oh my gosh, she did all this dead stuff.
No, actually Laura did all this dead stuff. I can't take credit for her work. Much as I'd like to, I won't. So HB 2775, I think, is the main one that we were looking at. I don't-
Pages.
It's, sorry, they're not numbered.
Oh,
but-
here it is, 2275.
Yeah. So that one didn't make it out of committee. And Eric, do you remember if there was another one? I don't remember.
There were two.
There were two?
There were two. One of them was that if an employee represented by a union chose not to pay union dues, that they would be
Oh,
an
right.
independent,
Right.
not contractor, but they would negotiate with the employer.
There's one right above it, 2643, which require the Employment Relations Board to impose an assessment on public employees.
Yeah, that was
Oh, that's
the
the one, isn't it?
dues paying one.
So that's also
Okay.
moving forward. Now, again, I always want to say, just because this bill isn't moving forward, doesn't mean the concept won't get stuffed somewhere else, so just.
Well, that's, yeah, so
we have
that's
to watch
Return
that.
from the Walking Dead.
Right, exactly. There we go, we can have a.
Oh, we'll have some. All right, I just want to keep, if you're keeping an eye on that, Eric, I would keep an eye, because this legislative session at the end could do all sorts of things.
Yeah.
And,
It's good to be up to speed.
yeah, and that would affect a lot of entities.
Yeah, and it gets, as you both have been through this before, you know, that at the end of the session, it gets very difficult to track some of this stuff. And
Does I know in the private sector, the family medical leave law is a big subject of discussion. Does that affect us?
The
The mandatory family medical leave,
the federal law, I mean, we've implemented for.
right, but this is the state proposed law that is pretty aggressive. I mean, it's.
I mean, there's. Yeah, well, I mean, we've implemented the Oregon Family Medical Leave Act. What we provide protected leave for medical leave. And then we have.
This is a bill this session to require, and I'm
Yeah.
asking whether it's just for private employers, but it's requiring certain lengths of.
I think what it does is it requires the private sector to do what the public sector has had to do for a long time.
It won't
But I'll-
change things for us, but it might for private business.
That's what I'd like to clarify. Is there anything that would add to us? Because
Okay, I'll double check.
in terms of costs, and I don't know. I know it's been a big issue in Salem.
Okay, we'll look for that one and
Okay.
bring it back. Otherwise, we'll just
Good.
update our list. So this was kind of a bit of work to get to here, but in the future, what you'll see then is just everything shaded in blue is what you've already done, and then everything else should be either a 3 or dead, and that's really what the list will look like from here on out until, and you can make changes. I'm not saying it's cast in stone, you can make changes, but there won't be, and then we'll mark things as they do pass. We'll mark those in green text or something else, so you'll see it. So it will be lovely and color-coded, but it's getting to a manageable point. We know what we're working on, and
Didn't feel like it yesterday.
well, but you know what? In all the past sessions, we've had lots more twos, so I feel like this is actually a step in the right direction where we really are focusing our attention on a limited number of bills where we can have some influence, so. And we've already had some successes, so.
Well, if the speaker or the president of the Senate or something were from Deschutes County, we might have, or the governor was from, aligned with us, we might have more ones and twos, but,
You'll have to work on that for the next time round, I guess.
okay.
Okay?
Senate Bill 500, by the way, regarding the veterans exemption, it's increasing the exemption, the homestead exemption for disabled vets who were
It raises the dollar.
who were service-connected disabled. It's not addressing the veterans deferral. It's a separate program. It's just increasing the homestead exemption.
The homestead exemption for bankruptcies and for, okay, so it's not about property taxes.
No, it's just increasing the exemption substantially if it's a service-connected disability. But it's not connected to the existing veterans deferral program where they defer payment of their taxes until they no longer own the
Right.
property.
Okay, good, thanks for checking that. Anything else, Tom, for today?
2 notes real quick.
Yeah.
I had a person from the water district in Terrebonne call me and ask me about sewer.
Okay.
So I
I
offered,
that Commissioner
Oh,
Darrell
yeah.
was the
No, I
chair-
confirmed
the
all that,
chairman of
yep.
that effort.
but I offered to go to their water district meeting and explain a little bit to him. So I'll be in Terrebonne too, a couple weeks from now.
When is it? Oh, good.
So just follow up for Monday, Nick and Peter will have a discussion item for the Tuesday work session next week as follow-up to the joint meeting with the planning commission. And one of the bullets on there is direction on the sewer system in Terrebonne.
Okay.
So we will be talking about.
Good. I'll be good and clear, because I told, the water district doesn't have to be the sewer district. It's a group of people in a rural area that want to vote to support this. It can't come, we could advocate for it, but it's still a vote of the people, so it's not going to be started at Deschutes County level of government. So those are just the basics I just want to explain to the folks that'll be at the meeting, so.
Great. And another update I have is, I met this morning with members of this, from the city council, the mayor and the city manager, and put ODOT about the infra grant and helping get a broad-based support for that grant being awarded by the federal government that would raise the funding for the north end of Bend. So I'll keep people posted on that in terms of what we're thinking about doing, so.
I mentioned to Bob Townsend that an idea about building a building in La Pine for the DMV, and that, they could be a partner up front to talk about what a lease might look like, or if that could come together. So at least ODOT's been notified verbally. It's just an idea at this point. Also, last board meeting, we had a public hearing for marijuana appeal, and it was set for 11:10 or 11:15 on the agenda. We powered through the agenda in 40 minutes, so we were 20 minutes early, which wasn't a problem, except the appellant's group, Liz Dixon wasn't here. So and it was acknowledged, we're like, oh, we better stop, because this is a public hearing notified at a specific time. So we ended up taking a 20-minute break. So, it wasn't hard to do, but it was just the first time we'd been in that situation where our published agenda item probably shouldn't have started early. That's what happened. I don't know,
Did you end up starting it, or did you wait till the
We
assigned
waited.
time? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I thought we would do, and so it's just a matter of trying to get better. at
But we just
gauging
hadn't been in that
how long-
situation
how
before.
long times would go.
So,
So we were done today earlier.
yeah, and then when it's a public hearing, we just, because it was going to be the applicant starting we got to the point where he just about said to say something, and then we're like, oh, wait a minute, we don't have two sides in front of us, and it was published for 20 minutes from now. So.
Good. All right. Thank you, and we'll adjourn the meeting.